You are listening to Lighthearted, the official podcast of the United States Lighthouse Society. My name is Jeremy D'Entremont. Welcome. I have a very special guest co-host today, Judianne Point, who is a very active volunteer with the Friends of Pomham Rocks Lighthouse in Rhode Island. Hi, Judianne.
Hi, Jeremy, and hi to all you lighthouse enthusiasts out there.
Great to have you with us, Judianne. Thank you so much. In a few minutes, we're going to listen to an interview about the Harbour Town Lighthouse at Hilton Head, South Carolina, which is probably the best-known faux lighthouse, that's F-A-U-X, probably the best-known faux lighthouse in the United States. Judianne, you've been on the podcast before, and I saw you, of course, when I visited Pomham Rocks Lighthouse recently. I was there on the day the historic Fourth Order Fresnel lens was put on display in the museum inside the lighthouse. That was really exciting. So what did that day mean to you and your organization?
Wow, Jeremy, I don't even know where to begin with this. I wish that every lighthouse out there that is lacking their lens would have the opportunity to get it back. Just to give a little background information, we originally had a sixth order lens, which was there in 1871. In 1926, our fourth order lens came to the lighthouse, and it was there till 1974 when Dennis Tardif was in the Coast Guard. He was our last keeper, and it was decommissioned. So we're lucky in that we knew where the lens was going, and that was at the Custom House Maritime Museum in Newburyport, Massachusetts. So we knew where it was located, but see, the lighthouse wasn't ready to house it because we needed a lot of restoration. So the exterior was done, the interior restoration was complete in 2018. And the opportunity of having the 150th anniversary, I think, gave us a good reason to really go for it and see if we could get the lens back. Now, Dennis sent a letter to the Coast Guard curator, Arlen Danielson, asking if she could coordinate the transfer. And she did a fantastic job. We, of course, it went through. We were able to go get our lens. So we hired a lampist, Kurt Fosberg, and he coordinated the entire move. We went up to the Custom House Museum to get the lens, and I'd never been there before. But when you walk in, it's this beautiful old building, and you look down this long entryway, and there was the lens, the crown jewel, in front of this window, and it just looked gorgeous. And you could see in the faces of the people there at the museum that they hated to see it go. And I don't blame them one bit. But, you know, Kurt actually made this crate to put the lens in. It took 4 people to carry it. It was Kurt, it was Dennis, it was the vice chair, Alex Dias, and my husband, Gary. That thing was heavy, and I think it was a little higher on the pedestal than Kurt had expected, so they had to step it down to a table, and then he built the crate around it. It looked like something that would carry the Ark of the Covenant. It was really, the way he did it, everything just fit to a T. So when we went up there, it was sad in a way. It was exciting for us. It was sad for the people at the museum, but we brought it back. And of course, you were there. You saw the way that Kurt had displayed it. He put the brass railings around. He even made a replica brass fourth order lamp to go in it, and it just looks gorgeous in the display. But one of the best things was the people I will name them, that came from the Custom House Museum. It was the executive director, Joan Whitlow. It was the chairperson, Susan Bernhard, and the vice chair, Jack Santos. And we brought them over about 2 weeks ago. We brought them over to the island to see it. And you could see the looks on their faces. They were so happy to see how we were caring for that lens. And that was just so satisfying for us. And Kurt had something to say which really rang a bell with me. He said that lighthouses were made for the lights, for the lenses. And to bring it home, it's like bringing the heart and soul back to your lighthouse. And that's really how it felt. It was amazing.
Yeah, well, that's a great way to put it. You know, my wife Charlotte has been known to say, "What's a lighthouse without a light?" You know, it's the soul of the lighthouse. I definitely think that. A couple of follow-ups on what you just said. First of all, Dennis Tardif who you mentioned, of course, as you said, was one of the last Coast Guard keepers of that lighthouse. And for people who don't know, I don't think we've actually said, or have we said, that it's in Rhode Island. It's near East Providence, Rhode Island, on the Providence River. And Dennis was one of the last Coast Guard keepers there in the 1970s, and he's currently the president of the Friends of Pomham Rocks Lighthouse. And I interviewed him for episode 70 of this podcast. So if people want to hear more about his history with the place, both as a member of the Coast Guard and with the Preservation Organization, they could listen to episode 70. I also wanted to mention that I have some history with that lens and with the Custom House Maritime Museum in Newburyport. I've spoken at that museum, I think a couple of times over the years. And one time a friend of mine had her wedding in that museum.
Wow.
That was quite a few years ago. And during the wedding reception, somebody came over to me and said, they knew I was into lighthouses. So they said, there's a lighthouse lens here, right? And at that time, it was in like a separate room kind of off by itself, not where you saw it. So a few of us went into that room, and I saw that there was a plug hanging from the lens and an electrical outlet right there. The room was pretty dark. So I plugged in the lens, and it had probably like a 60-watt bulb or something in it. But because it was magnified by that beautiful little Fresnel lens, and because the room was pretty dark, it was like blinding when that light went on. And everybody kind of screamed or, turn it off, turn it off. I pulled out the plug really quickly. But when I think of that lens, I always think of that moment. So that was pretty memorable. But
see, they really worked.
Yeah, they definitely did. And finally, I want to mention that the day I was there, when Kurt and you and everybody, Dennis and everybody you mentioned, Alex Dias, were involved in putting the lens in its new display in the museum inside the lighthouse. I shot some video that day and took a lot of pictures, and I put together a little video that's on YouTube. If people want to see that, they can go to the U.S. Lighthouse Society YouTube channel. Just search YouTube for USLHS. It's very easy to find. And that video was on there. So that was a lot of fun being there and putting that together.
We were so happy to have you. And believe me, that video is well worth a watch. So I highly recommend it.
Well, thank you. Thank you. So we're actually recording this on December 2nd. I think that's today's date, right? Yeah.
Yes.
And something happened yesterday related to Pomham Rocks. Is that right?
Yes. Well, it was the 150th anniversary of the first lighting. That was on December 1st, 1871. So we had a little celebration. A few of us went over on the boat to the island, and we had a dedication. I had written up a dedication. I wanted to make it for the keepers, because so much, has been done. We've had so much restoration on the lighthouse itself. We just had it painted to the 1871 colors, bringing back the lens. All that is so important. And like I said, we brought back the heart and soul, but I wanted to dedicate it to people who breathe life into the lighthouse. So David Kelleher, our historian, read it. And it was cool because my husband recorded it, and we have that actually on our YouTube site. We had it so that David was flanked by a keeper on either side, one of them, of course, being Dennis. And then we had a special guest keeper, and that was Fred Mickelson. And I think you had interviewed him about 100 episodes ago. But it was wonderful to have them there. They told some stories, and Dennis mentioned his ghost story. We saw the exact spot where that rocking chair was moving on its own. We had some fun with that. And and if I may, I just want to give a shout out to somebody. There was a keeper, and he's a member, but he was not there at the dedication. And forgive me, his name, I'm not sure how he pronounces it. If he pronounces it the French way, it's Malouin, Philip Malouin, or Philip Malouin. Malouin, I'm not sure. I apologize. But he was a keeper at both Pomham Rocks and at Kennemicut. And it's his 80th birthday coming up on December 28th. He was in the Coast Guard for 23 years. So we at Pomham Rocks just wanted to give him this shout out and thank him. And we wish him all the health and happiness on his 80th birthday on December 28th. And coming up in 2022, we're going to have our second annual Pomham Rocks Lighthouse Run. It is a road race, a 5K and a 10K. It was such a success last year. We're going to do it again. We raised a lot of money. I hope to go double this year. We weren't able to have after race activities, but we do hope to have those and have vendors there. And of course, we'll have the music again. And then we hope to start up our tours also in 2022. We had everything ready to go, and we all know what happened. So we hope to get the public out there. These will be our first public tours.
Oh, that's going to be fantastic. It's a great lighthouse, very beautiful, and to get people out there is just going to be, the icing on the cake.
Oh, yes.
So congratulations to you and everybody involved with that lighthouse. You've done such an excellent job with the restoration and the exhibits and everything else. And I want to add that anyone interested in learning more about Pomham Rocks Lighthouse should check out the website at pomhamrockslighthouse.org. You'll have to keep us updated. We'll have to talk more about this in the future because there's a lot going on. But our main focus today is actually a lighthouse down in South Carolina, the Harbour Town Lighthouse. My wife, Charlotte, and I took a trip to Georgia and a little bit into South Carolina in early November. We drove up to Hilton Head, where I recorded the interview we're going to listen to in a few minutes. Judianne, can you please help me tell everyone about the Harbour Town Lighthouse and our guests today?
Sure, Jeremy. Hilton Head Island, or simply Hilton Head, is a barrier island about 20 miles northeast of Savannah, Georgia, and 95 miles southwest of Charleston, South Carolina. The island features 12 miles of beaches and is a popular vacation destination. It's also a golf mecca with 33 courses on the island.
The construction of Harbour Town Lighthouse at the Sea Pines Resort on Hilton Head was funded by Charles Fraser, and the tower was designed by architect Kenneth DeMay. Completed in 1970, the 90-foot-tall octagonal tower has distinctive red and white bands and a white light that flashes every 25 seconds.
Harbour Town Lighthouse is now a tourist destination for Hilton Head Island with about 250,000 visitors yearly. The lighthouse features a museum in its interior with gift shops at the bottom and top of the tower. Because it's seen by millions as a backdrop for the final hole of the Harbour Town Golf Links, the lighthouse has become a widely recognized landmark and a symbol for the Sea Pines Plantation and Hilton Head as a whole.
As I said, I visited Hilton Head in early November, and I had a chance to tour the Harbour Town Lighthouse. I interviewed 3 people when I was there. Nadia Wagner is the general manager and modern-day keeper of the lighthouse. Greg MacDonnell is a teaching golf professional and also a local historian who has given tours at Harbour Town. And Mark King is the president of Club Group, the company that manages the Sea Pines Resort. Let's listen to our conversation about Harbour Town Lighthouse in South Carolina now. I'm here today at the Harbour Town Lighthouse at the Sea Pines Plantation on Hilton Head Island. I'm joined here by Nadia Wagner, who's the general manager and the modern-day keeper of the Harbour Town Lighthouse, and Greg MacDonnell, who is a local historian, I believe has run tours of the property here as well. And we're going to be joined soon by Mark King, who's the owner of Club Group Company, the company that runs and manages the lighthouse. So Nadia and Greg, thanks so much for being with me.
Thank you.
So Nadia, let me start with you before we talk specifically more about the lighthouse. I've been reading about you online. There's some great articles about you. You have a real interesting background. You've been the general manager and keeper of the lighthouse here for nearly 30 years. But as I said, you've had a really interesting life. Can you just maybe tell us a little bit about your background and what brought you to Hilton Head and the lighthouse?
Well, I actually grew up in former Yugoslavia. December 7th of 1977, I moved here with my mom, my brother, and sister, and we settled in Chicago. It was my father's dream to build a better life for us. So for years, we dreamed of coming to America. And that dream came true for us, but unfortunately, my dad's illness prevented him from seeing his dream come to life. So we're here thanks to him. And I moved to Hilton Head. I actually moved to the Fusky Island in 1987. Mm-hmm. At that time, I was living in Houston. I had 2 children. My son was 6 and my daughter was a year old. My sister-in-law, who lived here for many years, told us about this beautiful island. We moved to the Fusky in 1987. I lived there for 3 years. And in 1991, I actually interviewed for a job at the Quarter Deck Restaurant. And that's what started my journey here in Harbour Town.
Mm-hmm. Quarter Deck Restaurant, which is right next to the lighthouse here. Right?
Yes.
Yeah. And speaking of that, there's some work going on with the restaurant. I think some other things around here. So if people here listening to this hear construction noise in the background, that's why. We've just been joined by Mark King, the owner of Club Group Company, which, as I understand, runs and manages this lighthouse we're in right now. Nice to meet you, Mark. Thanks for being with us. So we'll definitely be talking to you in a moment, but I was going to direct my next question at Greg MacDonnell, our local historian here. Let's talk a little bit about generally about Hilton Head. Certainly some interesting history of this island. It's a lot of interesting history. Lots happened here.
Absolutely, yeah. As far as the Civil War is involved, the Port Royal Sound, which is butts Hilton Head on the north end of the island, is the largest natural sound on the East Coast. So when the U.S. troops came down the coast, they wanted to secure that area first to make sure that they could cut off the Confederate troops from all supplies coming in and out of the coastline. So that's why Hilton Head was strategic in its position on the East Coast for the troops to come in. 60 ships, over 20,000 troops came onto Hilton Head and established a beachhead back in 1861 after the end of the war. And under the officer Samuel DuPont and General Thomas Sherman, they came in and battled the Battle of Port Royal, which was against the Confederate troops based out of Beaufort. Of course, that's where the secession papers were signed. So a lot of history here, not only the beginning of the war, where the papers were signed in Beaufort, but also this is where the war ended, basically, and the freed men, the slaves became freed men and established themselves on Hilton Head. So quite a lot of history on Hilton Head.
Yeah. Interesting recent history as well. Of course, it's developed into a major resort. How did that come about?
Well, that could be a whole novel,
Yeah,
and it has been because we sell books in here talking about Charles Fraser and the vision of the man. But before it was Charles, it was his father and a gentleman named Mr. Hack and Mr. McIntosh who took the land and did it for timber. The original Hilton Head was for timber, so 20,000 acres of land were being timbered at the time. And Mr. Fraser owned the south end of the island. That 20,000 acres was part of the south end. And Charles had the vision of starting a development, residential development, environmentally sound. And so he went up and down the East Coast, and he asked one question to everybody that he wanted to ask. If you could do something different, what would you do? So he took all those answers and then applied them to the environmentally sound principles that he developed, and became Sea Pines Resort. So Sea Pines is the flagship of the island, but he's done a number of other things since that. And we can talk about that, like I say, for a long time.
I wonder if Mark might want to add anything.
It's almost cliche to say that Charles was a visionary. He was so far ahead of his time in the late 50s when he bought the 5,000 acres from his father and conceived what is now Sea Pines Resort. And basically, he did something very revolutionary, which Sea Pines is actually seen through this country and internationally as the birthplace of the modern-day planned unit development. That was a concept that was very unique at the time because most of the development happening in America for the previous 100 years was developers would come into a pristine area like Hilton Head Island, and they would clear cut basically the streets, have a master plan that was more or less on a grid pattern. Then they would come back and plant ornamental types of trees. Charles took an entirely different vision. He took a very environmentally sensitive approach to where he would actually lay out streets and would reroute streets around century-live oak trees. And so he was very environmentally sensitive, and his covenants and restrictions were way more restrictive than the Beaufort County zoning laws, which was also very unusual at that point. And so I think Sea Pines, here we are nearly 60 years later, is still seen as the example of planned unit development in America. Charles, at one point, had 38 Harvard MBAs working for Sea Pines. That was more than any Fortune 500 company.
Wow.
And all of them were indoctrinated into his philosophy of protecting the environment.
Mm-hmm.
And many times Charles, in his master planning of sea pines, would resist taking shortcuts, even though at times he was not the best capitalized in the world. He resisted those shortcuts.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we live with today is a master plan community that really is a testimony to his vision and his wisdom way beyond his years. And
Mm-hmm.
as Greg said, we could go on for hours, if not days and days, about the vision of Charles.
When and why was the lighthouse built?
I had the pleasure of knowing Charles for nearly 35 years, or almost 40 years, I guess. And when Charles conceived the lighthouse, it was a component piece of what he wanted to do as a focal point in Sea Pines, if not Hilton Head Island. Part of his philosophy was to have very unique, what he called gathering places,
mm-hmm.
where people within a community could have a sense of community and preferably could walk there or take bike paths, ride a bike to. And so Harbour Town was the anchor, if you will, gathering place.
Mm-hmm.
And he and Mary, his wife, who unfortunately just passed away a couple of weeks ago, was very integral in that Charles traveled throughout Europe and throughout Italy and took incredible notes and came back with a vision that was more or less patterned on Portofino on the coast of Italy. And many of the features of Portofino are incorporated in Harbour Town. For example, the proximity of the retail areas to the edge of the yacht basin is very, very cozy and comfortable. It's not far removed by parking lots or anything. You literally can be in front of the retail shops in one of the famous red rocking chairs within 20 feet of the harbor. So it's a very cozy, comfortable environment. He envisioned the 85 slip harbor, and the reason it's not just the round harbor, which had been by far the most economical harbor to construct,
Mm-hmm.
it's more an elliptical horseshoe. And the reason for that is that there is a monumental oak called the Liberty Oak that's nearly 300 years old.
Mm.
And Charles, when the planners laid out the plan, had the oak being removed, and he basically said, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to plan around it. So when you look at Harbour Town from an aerial perspective, it's sort of that elliptical horseshoe, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And it goes around the Liberty Oak as very much a feature. Part of the whole component of Harbour Town was he wanted a place that was more, quote-unquote, a beacon that would tell people this is Harbour Town and tell people it was a focal point. And so he conceived, because he had seen many of these lighthouses in Europe and America, and he conceived the lighthouse working with a firm from the Northeast. And the octagonal lighthouse that we're sitting in today,
Mm-hmm.
is 90 feet tall and 114 steps. And it was initially called Fraser's Folly because people thought it was ridiculous that someone would put a tubular steel framed lighthouse wrapped with plywood with an inch of stucco on it in front of the harbor on a remote island off the coast of South Carolina that people really had practically never heard of. And so in a very few short years, the idea of Fraser's Folly became known as an absolute jewel of a marketing idea, because Advertising Age magazine, I think it was in the early 70s, voted that the most recognized private logo symbol east of the Mississippi River is the Harbour Town Lighthouse.
Wow.
And here we are 55 years later, and this lighthouse is seen as the logo for certainly Hilton Head Island, if not the state of South Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
And part of his planning was that it also is the aiming point when you're on the 18th hole of the famous Harbour Town Golf Links.
Mm-hmm.
It's broadcast every year to 1 billion households throughout the world in 123 countries. And it's the first thing you see on the finishing hole is the Harbour Town Lighthouse. So that's part of the wisdom and foresight that he had that was just way beyond most folks.
Why specifically the look of it? It's got kind of compared to most traditional lighthouses, it's got a bigger gallery or a catwalk, balcony, whatever you want to call it. And also it's got the very distinctive red and white stripes. Are there particular reasons for the look of the lighthouse?
Yeah, he wanted the lighthouse to be enjoyed by all.
Mm-hmm.
And so right now we have 10 landings, 10 steps each, climbing to the top, and then a beautiful 360-degree wide viewing area where we get nearly 200,000 visitors a year. A large percentage of those we actually are complimentary. We comp all military, our Sea Pines property owners, kids 5 and under free. But his vision was he wanted to be interactive, not just decorative, but for people to enjoy.
Right.
And so the steps are very, very wide. They're very easy. Every 10 steps you have a landing, and the deck is nice and wide. So he wanted it to be interactive. There's a very interesting anecdote behind it being red and white. And this happens to be a true story. What the original architects wanted the lighthouse to be the traditional black and white vertical stripe. And they went back and forth with Charles, and so Charles was unrelenting in wanting the horizontal red and white pattern. So a architect from the architectural firm was dispatched to come to Hilton Head Island to convince Charles to go with the black and white instead of the red and white. And so the gentleman arrives in Savannah, and after 8 hours, got back on the plane, went back, and the lighthouse is red and white. He was unsuccessful in convincing Charles to go with the traditional black and white, and so that's the reason the red and white lighthouse.
Well, I think it was a good decision. It certainly makes it more memorable.
It's very distinctive, and also the red and white. I mean, the whole idea of the Heritage Golf Classic and how that plays into the design of Harbour Town and how the Heritage plaid, certainly Fraser, by definition, he was a Scotophile, and he carried that tradition through. And when he conceived the Heritage Golf Classic, which, as Greg will say, golf has certainly been Greg's life on Hilton Head, it's just a remarkable story in itself.
And also, talking about the building of the lighthouse, there was a man named Bill Wally, who I believe figured in the story as well. Nadia, do you want to take that?
Yes, thanks. Bill Wally was the builder of the lighthouse. His grandfather actually built the Darwin Tower in Lancashire, England, as a commemoration of Queen Victoria's reign of England for 60 years, which took place in 1897.
Okay.
His father immigrated from England to Savannah, Georgia, and started a very successful construction company, Wally Construction Company. His 2 sons worked with him until his passing, and then they took over the company. It wasn't until 1965 that Mr. William Wally joined his brothers and continued constructing some amazing buildings. In 1969, Mr. Wally had the honor of building this lighthouse. A couple years ago, I had the pleasure of meeting Mr. Wally, and we actually did a 45-minute interview with him. And I learned so much from him. He's an amazing man. He was responsible also for building the Harpertown Pro Shop, or the Harpertown Golf Club.
Okay.
He took pride in his work. At the end of the interview, he actually asked me to ask him the question, how would you like to be remembered? And I asked the question, and he said, I want to be remembered by my hard work and integrity. It's very important that people remember me for my integrity.
Hard work and integrity. Those are 2 really important things. That's great.
A few months ago, we actually installed a memorial plaque for Mr. Wally. After his passing a couple years ago, we received many condolence cards and donations. People were actually sending donations to us in memory of Mr. Wally. So we took those donations and we decided to dedicate one small portion of the last landing at the top of the lighthouse. So for our visitors, they can enjoy and learn about this man who also had such an important part of this lighthouse.
Yeah, well, that's excellent. Does the lighthouse still serve as an aid to navigation? Or should I say, has it in the past and does it today serve as an aid to navigation?
Absolutely. This lighthouse was built as a navigational aid, private aid for Harbour Town. Over the last 28 years since we've been involved, we've seen close to 7 million people who climb to the top of the lighthouse. The lighthouse still guides all the yachts coming in and out of the harbor. There's a light at the top that rotates, makes a complete rotation every 33 seconds. So the lighthouse plays a very important part in Harbour Town.
Who maintains the lighting equipment?
Actually, we do all that.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you're the keeper, so you're
We're
in charge
the keepers.
of that.
Yes. Yeah. We're also joined with Coast Guard. The light, we had to consult with the Coast Guard.
Yeah.
The beacon has its own character.
Yeah.
It can't be close to any other lighthouse.
Right.
We also partnered up with the United States Coast Guard and the local Coast Guard Auxiliary and dedicated 3 of the landings to telling the story of the Coast Guard. Before there was GPS and modern navigation, the lighthouses were the what guided these large ships
Absolutely.
in and out of harbors and out in the intercoastal waterways. There is a wonderful exhibit sharing the story of the Coast Guard. One item that was donated to us by 9 retired Coast Guard pilots. They built this replica of the original Coast Guard Eagle. It sits on one of the landings. It's 16 feet long and 9 feet high, and has become very popular among our visitors.
Yeah. I've been on the Eagle a couple of times, but I
how
haven't seen,
nice.
the like receptions and that type of thing.
Yes.
I haven't climbed the lighthouse yet, so I'm going to do that in a few minutes when we're done. I get to see some of this stuff. So obviously we've talked about it a couple of times here. Visitors get to climb the lighthouse, the 90 steps, and see all these exhibits on the way to the top. Do most people who visit here climb the lighthouse, you think?
Most people who come in, not all.
Sure.
We're hoping that all would climb.
Yeah.
But over the last 28 years, close to 7 million people have made their trek to the top of the lighthouse.
Wow.
Yes, and a lot of our visitors are repeat visitors.
Yeah.
They're from all over the world. I've met people even from the Isle of Man, population 2,000. What's so unique about our lighthouse, it's the only lighthouse in the world that has a gift shop at the top of the lighthouse,
Right.
which was all the idea of my boss, Mark. He had this wonderful idea, put the shop at the top because for security reasons.
Yeah.
In 1993, a teenager went upstairs, ripped the trash can away from the wall, and threw it overboard.
Oh,
There was a
no.
woman walking along the
Oh,
oyster shell walk, and it almost hit her. So Mark realized, well, we need to staff it for security reasons, but then an idea, wow, we could actually do something else and open up the most unique gift shop. And that's where the idea started. 28 years later, here we are.
Yeah.
Not only do we have a shop at the top, but 10 years ago, we opened a gift shop at the base of the lighthouse for those that may not be able to climb. Downstairs, we offer a large variety of local history books, cookbooks, children's books, nautical items. We sell keepsakes, not just souvenirs.
Well, we're sitting here in the first floor shop, which looks really nice. And, I've been to many, many lighthouses. A lot of lighthouses have gift shops. I have never seen one on the top of a lighthouse or even inside the base of a lighthouse. They're usually in a separate building. The closest thing to this I can think of is Peggy's Cove Lighthouse in Nova Scotia used to have a post office in the first floor, in the base of the lighthouse, but no more.
How
A few years ago,
unique.
they cut out the post office, but that was pretty cool. I had that when I was there. Yeah. But I've never seen, especially 2 shops inside a lighthouse tower before. Very unusual.
Well, in 2001, Mark decided to rebrand the lighthouse as a museum. So we created a museum-like setting with fans on all the landings, air conditioning at the top and the bottom. We enhanced the history, added a lot of new storyboards, and so if you're here for the first time and you want to learn a little bit about the island, you can take home a part of history with you. So
Yeah.
Each landing tells an amazing history, beginning with early settlers, all through the plantation era and the Civil War, modern development, the building of the new bridge, and of course, we celebrate the heritage of golf on one of the landings as well.
Okay.
We also partnered with a gentleman who was the chairman of the Michael J. Fox Foundation for Parkinson's. He's a local resident of Sea Pines, takes amazing photographs.
Yeah. His name is?
His name is Jeff Kiefer.
Yeah.
He owns Vivid Gallery, which is only a mile away from the lighthouse at the shops at Sea Pines Center. His images are then transferred on canvas in all different sizes. We sell his artwork and donate all the proceeds to the foundation.
Yeah.
So over the last 28 years, we've actually donated over $150,000 to various local and other charities, including Michael J. Fox. And we also donate a portion of the sales of Coast Guard items to the local Coast Guard Auxiliary.
Oh, that's fantastic. I see these are his photos up here,
Yes,
right near us where we're sitting. They are amazing.
Yes.
So, Nadia, do you also have a lot of weddings and other events here at the lighthouse?
Yes, we do. Over the almost last 3 decades, we've hosted hundreds of weddings and countless engagements. The lighthouse is available for private rentals as well. So if someone wants to surprise their wife on an anniversary, they can rent the lighthouse for a few hours. If you've never been to Top Lighthouse, you have to see the reason why people choose to get married at the top. Not only is it romantic and unique, but our sunset will take your breath away. The photo backdrop is just phenomenal.
I'm sure. Yeah, that sounds great. Lighthouses in general are very popular places for weddings and engagements. I've facilitated a few engagements in my local lighthouse at Portsmouth Harbor Light.
Nice.
I always take the couple to the top, and I tell them, I just remembered I've got to make a phone call, and I leave them by themselves at the top of the lighthouse for a while.
Well, it's funny. Sometimes people rent the lighthouse out for a wedding. Sometimes they'll do it while we're open. And we can always tell when someone's about to propose. They get very nervous. They start looking around. As soon as we see that knee going down, we're there with our camera, our phone, and we try to capture it for them so they can have a memory they'll never forget.
Yeah.
We also have a live webcam at the top of the lighthouse. So a lot of our brides have luxury of getting married in front of the cam for maybe their family members who couldn't be here.
Oh, that's great.
Most of our weddings are very small and intimate.
Yeah.
It could be from 2 people to 40, but we try to keep our capacity up to like 40 to 50, no more than 50.
So we mentioned the quarterdeck restaurant. You actually worked there, Nadia, right? Or early on in your time here?
Actually, I did. In 1991, March 1st, I began my employment at quarterdeck, and Mark was my boss. After about a year, I became a supervisor and then a dining room manager, and part of my responsibility involved selling, creating, and coming up with ideas for quarterdeck logo merchandise. In that 1 year that we were selling the merchandise, we sold like $81,000 out of a tiny little box. And
wow.
When Mark came up with the idea to open the shop at the top, and he pulled me aside to the office and said, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're opening a shop at the lighthouse. It's going to be at the top of the lighthouse, and we'd like for you to run it. And my first thought was, wait, can we do it at the bottom?
Right.
But what an amazing, amazing idea.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been a pleasure working for Mark, and it's been an honor really working for Mark and serving people. I find like I'm in my element. When I'm around people and I learn, a little bit about where they come from and share a little bit what we offer here. It's been just an amazing experience, and I feel like God has me here for a reason.
Okay. Well, you're a great team, and I can see just from meeting you this morning and see that you love people. That's obvious. So it seems like you're in the right place. Mark, you'd like to add something?
Yeah, let me add something to that, Jeremy. I've made the comment quite a few times that for the past 28 years, Nadia has been our lighthouse keeper and really overseer of all lighthouse. And there's not anyone in the history of Hilton Head Island that has personally met and greeted more people than Nadia. She probably has single-handedly met at least 3 or 4 million people. And the number of people that either write in on our webpage or come back year to year, they'll ask about the little blonde with the accent. She's originally from Yugoslavia. Her southern accent is there, but she got a little bit of a Slavic accent. And so it's charming because a lot of people will come back, and Nadia has an incredible recollection of people's names. And so, I mean, the grandkids know Nadia.
In general, if people are coming to Hilton Head, what else do you recommend that they do here?
I would say I would rent bikes, and maybe if you're here in Harbour Town, after you climb the lighthouse, maybe bike through 605 acres of Sea Pines Forest Preserve. You can do a walking tour as well. If you have children, I would highly recommend an outdoor activity. We have a beautiful dinner cruise aboard Spirit of Harbour Town, a dolphin cruise on Vagabond. You can rent jet skis. You can go parasailing with H2O Sports. You can do an alligator boat tour that actually tells you a history of the alligators, and you can actually see some in our local lagoons. There's a beautiful little boat, the Pirate Cruise. It's amazing for little kids up to maybe 7, 8 years old. I can tell you it is so cool to see all these little kids all, riled up and marching through the harbor, getting on the boat and trying to shoot Stinky Pete. So it's a wonderful experience. If you're a golfer, you can golf at the Harbour Town Golf Links or the Ocean Course. You can maybe stop at shops at Sea Pine Center. There are a lot of cute little boutiques and quite a few restaurants.
Yeah.
On your way to the Sea Pines Beach Club, you can stop at the beach or take a drive or bike ride to South Beach Marina and enjoy some of the shops and restaurants that are there. If you happen to be here on the nights that Greg Russell's performing, it's a wonderful experience. He's been playing music under the oak tree for the last 45 years. I see so many kids that climb the lighthouse that have like a poster board that says, Greg, pick me, because what he does is he'll choose a kid from the audience and invite him to come up and sing with him. But I can tell you, seeing the faces and seeing so many people come back here year after year, there's so much deep meaning. I've met people who come in and say, hey, remember me? I was 8 years old when I lost my tooth on the staircase. I have a picture with you. And now they're coming back with their families and bringing their children here. So it's nice to see, people coming for generations. Hilton Head has a very deep meaning, and Harbour Town has played a major role in that too.
Yeah. Oh, there's an awful lot to do here. I'm glad you mentioned the preserve and all that. There's plenty here for nature lovers, obviously, and a lot to do even if you're not a golfer, although...
Absolutely.
It's a golf mecca too, of course.
Oh, if you like to shop, we have some beautiful boutiques there in Harbour Town, as well as South Beach and Sea Pine Center.
What are the hours for the lighthouse, Nadia? And secondly, how do people find out more if they're coming for a visit?
Yes, you can Google us or go to our webpage, harbortownlighthouse.com. We're open every day from 10 a.m. until sundown, so it changes throughout the year based on when the sun sets. We only close on Christmas Day. We're open Christmas Eve, New Year's Eve, Easter, Thanksgiving Day, and Thanksgiving Day after.
So I'm getting near the end here. I just have a final question that I really like to ask both Mark and Nadia. And this question is for bonus points, okay? So Mark first, what have you enjoyed most about your association with the Harbour Town Lighthouse?
Jeremy, I think let me answer that question and broaden it a bit. What I've enjoyed the most with my association with Harbour Town and the Harbour Town Lighthouse is my getting to know Charles over 35 plus years, and now having the privilege of continuing really what I consider his legacy of one of the most unique resort spots in America.
So Nadia, let me direct that same question to you. What have you enjoyed most about your association with Harbour Town and the lighthouse here?
Well, I'll be honest. I've made so many memories here. I've raised my children working for this company and working at the lighthouse. The lighthouse has special meaning to me. I'm so honored to be the lighthouse keeper and to serve these people that are coming here to enjoy what we have to offer. I've made so many friends over the years. And to be a part of something so unique and so special, and to be able to say I work in the symbol of what is not only the symbol of Hilton Head, but has become the symbol of South Carolina.
That sums it up pretty nicely. Nadia Wagner, you are a great spokesperson and representative for this property.
Thank you,
and I knew I was looking forward to meeting you because I read such wonderful things about you online. So it's wonderful being here. Mark King, owner of Club Group Company. As I said, you've certainly carved out a wonderful legacy here. So nice to meet you today. And Greg MacDonnell, again, thank you for your patience. You helped so much with the history of the place, and then you've been patiently sitting here with us. But Greg, thanks so much for your contribution today.
Thank you very much.
So thank you all so much. I got to climb the lighthouse now. Nadia, do you want to add one more thing?
Absolutely. Just wanted to mention how special it is to be a part of memories that were created here by so many people, and to make sure that we continue that lighthouse legacy, the same legacy that Charles Fraser had in mind, the legacy that Mark had in mind when he put the shop at the top, and most of all, the legacy that Mr. William Wally wanted to be so remembered by. It's been a true honor.
Yeah, well, it ties it all together. Thank you, Nadia, and thank you again, everybody.
To learn more about the Harbour Town Lighthouse and Museum, visit harbortownlighthouse.com. In this case, Harbour is spelt the British way, so it's Harbour, townlighthouse.com.
I want to thank Nadia, Greg, and Mark again for the interview and for their very gracious hospitality when I visited there. I had a great time. So, Judianne, I saw there's a special Christmas ornament commemorating the return of the Fresnel lens to Pomham Rocks Lighthouse.
Yes, we have a Fresnel lens ornament, and it is designed by Beacon Design from Lincoln, Rhode Island. It's a local company. One of our board members, Louise Piver, orchestrated this for us, and we're excited to be selling this. It's made of brass, which of course is perfect for a lighthouse. If people want to know more about it, they can visit our website at pomhamrockslighthouse.org.
Excellent. Thank you, Judianne. What is that perfect or what? A Christmas Fresnel lens ornament. I think it's absolutely perfect. A reminder to everyone to check out uslhs.org to learn more about the tours offered by the U.S. Lighthouse Society, as well as the Passport Program, the online research catalog, and much more. And remember that donations and memberships help support this podcast.
The Turkish author Mehmet Murat İldan once wrote, quote, "Open your eyes and look around carefully at the moments when you think you have failed, because the lighthouse of success mysteriously appears in the fog at those very moments." Unquote.
Thank you so much for co-hosting today, Judianne. Great having you on board, and I'm sure we'll do it again. Next week's episode of Lighthearted will focus on the history of the holiday visits of the Flying Santa to New England lighthouses, a tradition that goes back to 1929. As always, thank you for listening, and
keep a good light.
Out in the dark, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine.